She made her coffee this morning, and no one asked her how she takes it. She already knew. She made it exactly right, the temperature, the amount, the quiet ritual of it. And she sat by the window alone, and it was perfect. And somewhere between the first sip and the sound of the world waking up outside, she felt something she could not quite name. Not loneliness, not exactly. Something more like a question that the world keeps asking her without using words. A question that sounds like a raised eyebrow at family dinners. A question that sounds like, "So, are you seeing anyone?" A question that sounds like concern, but lands like judgment. And maybe today, sitting by that window with that perfect cup of coffee, she is tired of pretending the question does not bother her. Or maybe she is tired of pretending it does. Because here is what nobody is saying out loud. The empath woman who lives alone is not broken. She is not waiting. She is not a half-finished story. She is a woman who has felt so much, given so much, absorbed so much of other people's emotional weight, that she finally created a space where she could just breathe. And the world calls that sad. The world calls that lonely. The world calls that something to fix. I want to talk to you today about the truth, the full truth, not the sanitized version that tells you solitude is beautiful and leave it there. Not the guilt-soaked version that whispers you must be damaged if you are here. The real truth, the one that lives in the quiet of your apartment at 11 p.m., the one that shows up when you are both relieved and aching at the same time, the one that you have not said out loud because you are not sure anyone would understand. I understand. Let me start with something that psychology has known for a long time, but rarely says directly to empaths. People who are highly sensitive, people who feel the emotions of others as though those emotions belong to them, people who can walk into a room and immediately sense who is hurting and who is hiding it. These people are extraordinarily susceptible to what researchers call emotional labor absorption, which is a complicated way of saying this. You do not just feel with people, you carry people. You take what they cannot hold and you hold it in your own body, in your own chest, in your own sleepless 3 a.m. mind. And you do this so naturally, so automatically, that you often do not even notice you are doing it until you are completely, utterly empty. Now think about what happens when you add a romantic relationship into that equation, especially one where your partner is not equally attuned, not equally giving, not equally aware of the invisible weight you carry every single day. Think about what happens when you are the one who always senses the tension before it is spoken. You are the one who adjusts your mood to match the room. You are the one who notices when he is stressed before he knows he is stressed. And so you soften yourself, you make yourself smaller, you stop taking up space so that his discomfort has room to breathe. And you call that love. And maybe it is. But it is also disappearance. So many empath women who live alone today are not here because they gave up on love. They are here because love, in the form they experienced it, required them to give up on themselves. And at some point, something in them said no. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, finally, irreversibly, no. And I want you to hear this clearly. That no was not failure. That no was survival. There is a woman I want you to picture. She spent years in a relationship that looked fine from the outside. He was not cruel, not obviously anyway. He did not shout, he did not leave. But he also did not see her, not really. She would tell him something that mattered to her and watch his eyes glaze over just slightly, just enough that she noticed, just enough that she started editing herself before she spoke. She stopped sharing the poem she loved. She stopped talking about the things that moved her. She learned to need less, say less, feel less, at least visibly, because needing things in front of someone who cannot meet your needs becomes its own kind of humiliation. And she loved him. She genuinely, deeply loved him. But she was disappearing one small silence at a time. And the day she finally left, she sat in her empty new apartment on the floor because she had no furniture yet, and she cried. But underneath the crying, underneath the grief and the terror of starting over, there was something else. There was air. There was the first real breath she had taken in years. Maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you have lived that story or some version of it. Maybe yours was louder, maybe quieter. Maybe it happened once, or maybe it happened 3 times before something in you said, enough. However it happened, I want you to know that the apartment, the solitude, the quiet life you have now, that is not the consolation prize. That is not what you settled for because you could not have what you really wanted. For a lot of empath women, that solitude is the first honest relationship they have ever had with themselves. And that is not sad, that is sacred. But, and I say this with so much love, it is also complicated. Because here's the other truth, the one that lives on the other side of relief. Solitude for an empath is not simple. It is not just peaceful. It is also a place where your mind gets very, very loud. Because empaths do not stop feeling when they are alone. You feel just as much, maybe more. The difference is that when you are alone, you do not have anyone else's emotions to focus on, and so your own emotions come forward. All of them. The grief you did not let yourself feel in the relationship. The anger you swallowed because you did not want to seem difficult. The longing that you trained yourself not to name because naming it felt dangerous. Living alone as an empath means eventually you have to meet yourself. All of yourself. Not just the generous, intuitive, deeply feeling parts that you have always known, but the parts that are tired, the parts that are afraid, the parts that wonder if there is something wrong with you for being here. The parts that sometimes scroll through old photos not because you miss him specifically, but because you miss the version of yourself that still believed it would work out. And I need to tell you something about those parts. They are not your enemies. They are not proof that you are broken or that you made the wrong choice. They are the parts of you that have been waiting the longest. They are the little girl inside you who just wanted someone to stay, to see her, to choose her, without her having to earn it every single day. And she deserves to be heard. Not just managed, not just quieted, heard. Because here's what a lot of empath women do with their solitude. And I say this gently because I know it comes from such a genuine place. They fill it. They pour themselves into their work, into their friends, into causes, into other people's problems. Because sitting in the quiet and actually being with themselves feels too big, too still, too close to feelings they are not sure they can survive. And so they are technically alone, but they are never really with themselves. They are still performing, still giving, still making sure everyone else is okay. Just from a distance now. Just without a partner in the room. That is not healing. That is just a tidier version of the same pattern. Real solitude, the kind that transforms an empath rather than just isolates her, requires something that does not come easily to someone who has spent a lifetime tuning into others. It requires you to become radically, uncomfortably, stubbornly curious about yourself. What do you actually like? Not what sounds like something a person like you should like, but what genuinely lights something up in you. What makes you angry? Not the acceptable version of your anger, but the deep, real anger that you have been storing politely for years. What do you want from your life? Your actual life, not the life that makes sense to other people, not the life that reassures your family that you are okay, but the life that when you imagine it in the quiet of your own mind at night, makes you feel something close to hunger. Empath women who live alone and do this work, who actually go into the stillness instead of running from it, who sit with the hard feelings instead of immediately trying to help someone else with theirs, these women become something extraordinary. Carl Jung talked about the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming fully, authentically yourself. And he believed, truly believed, that most people never complete it. Not because they are not capable, but because they are too afraid of what they will find when they stop performing for others and start listening to themselves. Empath women who live alone have a rare and painful gift. They have been handed the exact conditions that make individuation possible. Silence, space, the absence of constant emotional demand, the opportunity to stop pouring out and finally start filling up. But here's the wake-up call. And I am saying this because I care about you, not because I want to be harsh. That opportunity can slip away. Not suddenly, not in one dramatic moment. It slips away in 100 small choices. The choice to stay busy instead of getting quiet. The choice to process your feelings with 10 different friends instead of sitting with them alone long enough to actually understand them. The choice to frame your solitude as something you are enduring until real life starts, rather than recognizing that this is real life. This is the chapter that decides who you become. Your solitude is not a waiting room. Let me say that again because it matters. Your solitude is not a waiting room. It is not a place you park yourself until a relationship comes along and real life begins. It is one of the most formative, most important, most soul-shaping seasons a woman can live through, if she chooses to be present in it. And I know the world makes that hard. I know there are people in your life who mean well, but who look at you with a kind of soft pity that you did not ask for. I know there are moments at weddings, at family gatherings, at Sunday mornings, when the whole world seems to be paired off, when the quiet of your home feels less like sanctuary and more like evidence of something missing. I know those moments are real. I am not asking you to pretend they are not. What I am asking is that you not let those moments define the story. Because the people who pity you do not know what you know. They do not know what it cost you to be here. They do not know what you walked away from, what you had to feel, what you had to face, to arrive at this quiet, complicated, honest life. They see a woman alone. They do not see a woman who chose herself when everything and everyone was asking her not to. And choosing yourself, for an empath, is not a small thing. It is one of the hardest things you will ever do. Because your instinct is to tend. Your instinct is to stay, to try harder, to give more, to believe that if you love someone enough and in the right way, they will finally be able to give you what you need. Leaving that instinct behind, or not leaving it, but learning to redirect it, learning to tend to yourself with even a fraction of the care you have always given others, that is the work. That is the whole work. So today I want to leave you with something to sit with. Not a task, not a checklist, just a question. If you treated yourself the way you treat the people you love most, what would be different tomorrow? Not in 10 years, not in the life you will have someday, tomorrow. Would you rest more? Would you be less critical of the way you look in the mirror? Would you stop apologizing for taking up space? Would you make that coffee a little slower, sit by that window a little longer, and let yourself feel good about the life you have built without needing anyone else to validate it? You are not a woman who failed to keep someone. You are a woman who finally, at great cost and great courage, kept herself. And that window in the morning, that coffee made exactly right, that quiet that belongs entirely to you, that is not emptiness. That is a life that finally has room for the person who has always deserved to live in it. You.